Okay, we are live. We are live. Welcome. Welcome to Escaping the Echo Chamber. Okay, that's me. That's why. We are live. Welcome to Escaping the Echo Chamber. We are live. Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday, everyone. Gonna give some time for people to come in. Yeah. Whew. Yeah, I didn't even plan on doing this, but after seeing a lot of the outrage, I'm like, okay, I got to do this video, and might as well go live with it because wow. If you've seen Everything Is Gonna Be All Right, then you probably understand where this is going. If you haven't seen and all you've seen is the previews, uh, so you've got the previews, you've got the outrage, the absolute outrage about this show that just dropped. In fact, it was supposed to drop like Friday night. Looked all over Friday night, couldn't find it. Couldn't find it at all. But finally found it today. And in fact, you don't even need Showtime. It's on Showtime. Everything's gonna be all right. Everything's gonna be all right. It's on Showtime. You don't even need to be a subscriber. I'm guessing it's the first episode is free. I don't know if they're gonna have the entire series is free because this is the first episode in a series. But the first episode is free, so you don't even need to have Showtime to watch this show. But if you watched any of if you saw the previews to this and the furor that it caused, the outrage, the disgust, in fact, one individual, like that was his opening. Disgusting. And I'm like, look at this performance. But it wasn't just him. You had a bunch of people performing, putting on absolute performances, trying to convince white people that, no, trust me, I'm one of the good ones. So beyond the show, the reactions to the show from people who didn't even see the show, because the show dropped, it was supposed to drop Friday. I didn't actually see it on Friday. I looked for it, couldn't find it. Finally, I found it today, watched it today. But if you look at most of the reactions to the show, most of the reactions that you look online about to see this show, you will realize are from people who haven't even watched the show. The majority of the reactions you're seeing to this show are from people who didn't watch the show. All they did was see the trailer, and then they started virtue signaling to their white audiences. That's what they did. They started virtue signaling to their white audiences to let their white audiences know, listen, no, trust me, I'm one of the good ones. I'm on your side. It's absurd. But I actually watched the show, and if you watch the show, I don't agree with everything, but there's some interesting things in it. There's some things that, if you want to be real, if you want to have actual discussions about race, hey, you got to be willing to have the discussions about race. But there's a lot of people that want to have discussions about race, or that claim they want to have discussions about race, but they don't want to feel uncomfortable. And that's like, hey, as the certain people on the right will say, facts don't care about your feelings. They say it about certain issues, but then when it comes to stuff like this, suddenly their feelings don't care about the facts. But the show came out. It's out now, and I want to talk about it. I want to talk about it because I actually watched the show, and I want to break down some of the things that were in it, some of the things that I found. In fact, let me just start with the things that I didn't like. With the first thing, the main thing I didn't like, and it's the opening, because the shows everything's going to be all right, and they start with January 6th. They start with January 6th, so they spend about 3 minutes 25 seconds at the very opening on January 6th. And here's my problem with this. January 6th was not about, despite the fact that the majority of people there were white, it was not, it was about people pissed off, people fed up, people that felt just anxious. January 6th doesn't happen. January 6th, 2021 doesn't happen if 2020 hadn't happened. 2020 is what was the catalyst for all kinds of anxiety, built up stress to manifest in various different ways. So we saw 2020 manifest in the massive protest all over the country. In fact, in other countries too, over George Floyd. That was about 2020. That was not about George Floyd. That was about 2020. People were just like, the world got rocked because of what happened in 2020. That's what January 6th was. They can try to say, "Oh no, they just wanted to take over the government," and no, that's absurd. That's absurd. January 6th, 2021 was just their outlet, the right's outlet, certain people on the right, their outlet for the anxiety, the stress, and the absolute, like, having their world view shattered and their sense of safety shattered after what happened in 2020. But that's they start this show with talking about how January 6th was evidence of, just this white, um, like this evidence of whiteness. And I'm like, I think 20, I disagree. But hey, if you're gonna disagree, let's have the discussion. Because if you start with, in fact, oh, I have an echo. Echo. Okay, so let me see. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't even realize that. What in? Okay, so let me try to do something about this echo real quick. And why am I not seeing the comments? Okay, so let me try to do something about this echo real quick. Okay, there you go. I have an echo. Let me see. What can I do about this echo? Okay, there you go. Okay, is the echo still there, or is it better now? Let me see. What am I doing? Yeah, so yes, and sorry, I didn't even see the comments. Yeah, PJ. Yes, it was definitely Officer Tatum on his foolishness. The disgusting. That's how he starts off his performance, because that's what it is. It's a performance. It's a virtue signal for his white audience to let them know, listen, I'm on your side, and it's ridiculous. But okay, it is still there. Let me see. What am I doing? In fact, let me move. I don't know if, okay, so let me see. I'll make some adjustments to the sound. I don't know if, okay, so let me see. In fact, adjustments. Okay. Let me see. Yeah, but the like I said, this episode, I don't know if I can. Yeah, I have my audio is muted, and that's what I'm trying to figure out. What is? In fact, okay. Yeah, let me cut this off. Okay, let me see if that's better. Input or output. Um, okay, echo. Yeah, I got echo. Must speak off. Okay, so right is back. Okay, so it's gone now. Okay, I hope it's gone because I made some adjustments. Hopefully, it's gone. Um, so the show was good though. I mean, the show was good in that it's dealing with the topic, and I think if you're gonna have racial discussions about race, we got to be willing to have tough discussions about race. We can't be afraid of feeling uncomfortable because listen, we're talking about some serious stuff here, so it's gonna get uncomfortable. But a lot of times, um, particularly white folks, don't want to feel uncomfortable. And so, if you just take a look what's happening in the country right now, you've got them literally saying, "Oh, we don't want this taught in our schools. We don't like." They in Florida, they literally made a law that to stop uh, teachings that make that make anybody feel uncomfortable. But it's made in direct response to white people feeling uncomfortable about so-called critical race theory and certain things in history, certain books. Like you're making laws to protect your feelings, like that. That's just if that doesn't yell out and denote, white fragility. I don't know what does. But white fragility is one of the things that comes up in this episode because this um I forgot the name of the episode, but it starts talking about how, with January 6th, if there was a riot, if black people were engaged in a riot, oh, the riot police would show up, they would, people would get killed. And I'm like, okay, let's stop and realize that there were a lot of things that went wrong on January 6th, some things that may have been intentionally went wrong, but not everybody made it out alive either. Not everybody made it out alive. But if you look at things like they start talking about history, they start going back into history, and even just the language of something like a little white lie, that phrase. They're like, what does that mean, little white lie? And they're talking about how that is this image that if it's a white lie, it's good. It's not that bad. It doesn't hurt anybody. It's small. It's not a bad thing. Yeah, it's not true, but it's not a bad thing either. And then somebody says, "Yeah, well, if you want to talk about a little white lie, let's talk about American history, because the lies that have been told about America's history, yeah, that definitely qualifies as this whitewashing that has been done, and they're doing it to make it seem as if, oh no, listen, nobody gets hurt by us telling these untruths, when in reality you're you're obscuring a whole bunch of bad stuff that happened, and a whole bunch of bad stuff that happened to a specific group of people. So that's why when we start talking about race, white people get uncomfortable, because now you're challenging the lie. You're challenging that white lie. But it's worse than that. And this is the thing that a lot of white people don't even realize. I like that Sonny Johnson talks about this kind of stuff, because when you start lying about history, like if you're going to lie about what has happened to black people in America, then you will be completely unprepared for when that same thing that has happened to black people in America now happens to white people in America. Because now you'd be like, oh, how's this going to happen? How can this happen in America? And black people are telling you this has been happening. We've been trying to tell you. And the perfect case in point is 2020. If you look at 2020, from the summer on, black people are marching through the streets, protesting police brutality, government overreach, saying the government is out of control. They're just doing too much. And like in Staten Island, white people, they actually had a BLM and George Floyd protest, and white people in Staten Island did a Black Back the Blue rally. This is 2020, June of 2020, August of 2020. The white people get together, they do their Back the Blue. But yeah, Black the Blue, they're counter protesting the George Floyd protesters. By by December of 2020, those same white people are now protesting against the government because their stores and their restaurants are being shut down. Now they're talking about tyranny and government overreach, and now they're like, "Oh, how's this going to happen in America?" And it's like, they were just telling you, black people were just telling you this has been happening, but you wanted to back the blue. Now it's happening to you. Now it's a problem. But that keeps happening because as long as white people want to pretend that injustices haven't happened and that what this government isn't capable of in the United States and has done to black people, they won't see it coming till it's too late. They won't see it coming till that boot's on their neck. And then what do? But if they were willing to acknowledge the reality of what's happened, then they can see, okay, wait a minute. This is going to happen to us next. Of course. Because the government's not going to, once the government starts feeling a certain amount of power, they're not going to say, you know what, let's give this power back to the people. No, the government will keep doing it. They will go further and further. And if you just see what they're doing right now, like it's clearly evident. But as long as, people want to pretend, no, this isn't going to happen to us. This just happened. It happened to black people. That's it. And it's over. You have people on the right saying that black people rioted for months in 2020 when the majority of them were white and footage shows they were mostly white. Well, yeah, and that was an interesting thing. You had so many people from Antifa and BLM that weren't even, that were white people going to these areas and protesting and in some cases rioting, in some cases doing damage to buildings and businesses. And let me see, why is this? Yeah, it was really crazy that you had so many people. Okay, yeah, Dante. Yeah, truthfully, the government doesn't give a damn about any of us, blacks or whites. Absolutely, it really doesn't. And as soon as we start realizing it, then we're better off. But the government loves playing both sides. Like, oh no, look at them. And that's actually a point that comes out later on in the show. But the show talks about a lot of stuff. And in fact, so it talks about how that by lying about history, so it has negative effects for both black people and white people. It keeps white people oblivious to what your government is actually capable of. Because if you're lying about what the government did to black people, you won't be prepared for what the government is capable of doing to you. To black people, the lies that are being told, because remember, you've got this public education system, which is just promoting this false sense of reality and this false narrative of history, and it's the harm it causes to black kids and black kids that then become black adults is a lack of identity, a lack of self-respect. And it's one of the things I keep talking about with black history, how they start with slavery. Because if you start with slavery when you're talking about black history, then anything beyond that sounds like progress. So if I think of Black history as being just slaves in chains, then I get to oh well, now I'm making minimum wage at McDonald's. That's progress. That sounds like, that makes it feel like, oh yeah, we've accomplished something. Like no, there's more. There's more to want. There's more to expect. There's more to strive for, instead of just being satisfied with just such meager accomplishments. Um, so yeah, just look at Portland. It's mostly rich white kids from the suburbs. Most people rioting and looting tech were outside those communities. Then they were doing it to ourselves. I just flee to Mexico if USA. Well, listen, it's, I don't know how far this is gonna get, how much worse this is gonna get, but if you're paying attention, things are getting drastically worse. For instance, these mandates that they've implemented in the United States, like they've used fear, and they have exploited the public's fear to increase the amount of power that the government has. And so they've got people on the left cheering for these mandates. You've got people on the right cheering, in Texas, in Florida, cheering for these other laws that are drastically increasing the government's power. And nobody's realizing that at the end of the day, whether you're a regular person on the right or a regular person on the left, the regular people lose. The government gets stronger. The government has more control over every aspect of our lives. That's what the result is. Um, and in fact, if you even take a look at this the show, they start talking about how, why, and how and why whiteness was created. And whiteness was a creation of power, a construct. So if you've heard of how they talk about critical race theory talks about whiteness and blackness. These are race is a social construct, because somebody came together and said, hey, we're going to create these categories, and these categories are going to be what we use to justify, like they wanted to justify slavery. So boom, because if you look at like the Declaration of Independence, all men are created equal, but these are these are blacks. Blacks aren't people, so we can do that because, you know they're a different category. They're a lesser category than all men are created equal. So we can do this. But these are the lies that government told in order to justify the evil it was doing. And like I said, if that's how the government operated then, you can just bring it up to today and see how the government continues to lie to justify the stuff it's doing today. We can't talk about Black history until the nuclear Black family is back together. I think we need to be talking about Black history, period. But here's why I say that. Because if we start talking about Black history in terms of, we get to see of how the Black family survived, and how the Black family was used as a unit to help Black people to survive a bunch of the stuff that that happened. If you're talking about things like after Reconstruction, yeah, after slavery was officially ended, during Reconstruction, and what happens? Black people start building up Black Wall Streets, and the Black family was critical to that. Was crucial, was a crucial aspect of that, of Black people building wealth and having their families. Because one of the things I think that needs to happen is, it's having the Black family together would definitely help with education. Because right now we have a public education system that is beyond garbage. It's beyond, like, and it's not garbage by accident. It's garbage on purpose. It's intentionally meant to just waste people's time. And if you've got two parents, you have it's a much easier way for one parent to, homeschool, and for parents to share the duties of teaching their kids, so that they can still not have to be dependent upon the system to educate our kids. That's why I send my kids to private school. I don't trust public education system anymore. Yeah, we shouldn't trust the public education system. And listen, and this is funny because even Malcolm talked about this. And Malcolm said, like, how do you expect to thrive by what? How does the black community expect to thrive? How can black people thrive if the enemy is teaching your children? If the enemy has custody and control over your children, how can you thrive? How can you get anywhere? Because this is the same government that has just wreaked havoc on the black community. And to have this government teaching our kids is insane. It's actually better to homeschool if you can. Therefore, your children will get your morals. Because there's a lot of in education. There's a lot of it's they're not just teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic. They're using the public education system to actually teach morality and to actually mold the children's minds into how the government wants them to be. I don't give a dang about the Declaration of Independence because I am not subhuman. I am a whole human. Absolutely. What is Black history? Is the Black family. We know that the government removed fathers and replaced it with the government. But you see, it's deeper than that. It's deeper than that because the it's so when you have the 60s and 70s. Okay, so for instance, I did a video on Black Wall Street, right? And a lot of people talk about especially last year, because last year was the anniversary of the Tulsa massacre. So, for those of you who don't know, Black Wall Street was a thriving Black community. You had doctors, lawyers, all Black-owned businesses, and it was thriving. It was very well-to-do. Black theaters, grocery stores, land, everything was Black-owned. And O.W. Gurley was the one of the main founder who bought land in Oklahoma, in Tulsa, and started. He would even loan money to Black families to buy land and to start businesses. So the Tulsa Race Massacre happened. They killed a bunch of Black people, destroyed the town, put a bunch of people, Black people, in internment camps. But Black people, after they got out, they rebuilt Black Wall Street. And that's what a lot of people don't talk about. They rebuilt Black Wall Street. They built it up, and within 2-3 years, it's thriving again. What killed Black Wall Street wasn't the Tulsa Race Massacre. Because the second time that Black Wall Street was attacked, it was the federal government. And the federal government used urban renewal to destroy Black Wall Street. The federal government used urban renewal to destroy Black Wall Street. What it did was it actually used eminent domain, stole the land from the people. Okay, here, we'll compensate you. And then built highways and in the Interstate Highway Act, the Federal Highway Improvement Act, and just built highways through Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Greenwood. That's how they destroyed Black Wall Street. That's how they destroyed Black wealth. And they did it all over the country. So, because that's why it's important for us to know history, to see exactly how, because Black people made so much advancements, and then time and time again, here they come again, and with some other tool to dismantle, what Black people have built for themselves. And it's insidious, but that's why it's so important to discuss the actual history. It's funny, me and this dude. Oh yeah, absolutely. I know we agree on a lot. Dante. Definitely. People said that Atlanta, Georgia was supposed to be the new Black Wall Street. Well, Atlanta's doing great things right now, but we don't even need just one Black Wall Street. Like I said, there wasn't even just one Black Wall Street then. There were Black Wall Streets all over the country. But with the way that the economy is, not just the economy, but the way technology exists today, we can continue to build Black Wall Streets like right now. And I like what's going on in Atlanta, but we can be doing this all over the country. Like Atlanta should not be um, the only place. Um, of course, the nuclear family is very important. Kids that grew up in single parents' homes have a harder time of success in life, especially for boys that don't have a father figure. Yeah, without a father figure, a lot of times kids will look for father figures, and sometimes they'll find father figures in people that shouldn't be looked up to as father figures. That's why a lot of youths wind up joining gangs because they're looking for someplace to belong to, somebody to identify with. Okay, James. Escaping. Where do you actually lean politically? I identify as a libertarian. Um, Hi, Javier Sanchez. That's science. That's what I'm saying because as a black man raised by a single mother, I know how important it is to have that balance. Yeah, it's definitely good to have that balance. Uh, but like this show, I think so. A lot of people looked at the show and they had a different. The trailers are just trailers. The actual show goes deeper, and I think what happens is if you're a white person that or if any white people that wanted to watch the show, they could get better insight into how black people feel. And there's black people that were complaining about the show that probably should actually watch the show so that they could have a better understanding if they want it. Because there's some black people who know where black people feel and black people's thoughts on the subjects, but they're just some of these pundits and some of these YouTubers out here are just trying to put on a show for their audiences because then like they don't want they're trying to keep their audience happy and they're like, hey, no, listen, they're I'm not with them, I'm with you. But the show, like I said, there was some really interesting things. In fact, they talked about interesting thing. They asked the question, who is your favorite historical figure? Who's your favorite white historical figure? So there were several people that couldn't answer the question. Like Jamel Hill was one of the people they asked. And Jamel Hill, I don't know if you know her, she was from ESPN. And she couldn't answer the question. She's like, yeah, I'm gonna have to skip that question. Somebody else asked, and I think it was Sheik Luch. Was it Sheik Luch? He says, yeah, Sheik Luch from the Locks. He says Abraham Lincoln was his first favorite white person. And obviously, if you know how Abraham Lincoln, the Emancipation Proclamation, I know who mine was, and I didn't think anybody was actually going to say it, but somebody did. Margaret Cho, she's a Asian comedian. She said who my favorite white person was historically, John Brown. If you don't know who John Brown is, John Brown was an abolitionist, a white abolitionist. But he wasn't just saying, okay, we need to end slavery and hey guys, let's do something about this. Hey, let's stop this. This is wrong. John Brown says, listen, there's no talking. You're murdering people, you're raping people, you're holding people in just the most like you're treating people like they're animals. That's not right. That's there's no question that that's not right, and I'm going to fight against it. I'm not going to ask questions. I'm not going to try to reason with you. I know it's not right. Like because he was a Christian. He's like, I know it's not right. We have the same Bible. You know it's not right. The fact that you choose to do it means okay. Now it's time for me to act on that. He picked up guns and he went to war. He went to war. He lost his life because of it, but he was willing to put his life on the line to try to stop slavery. And even though he was not personally enslaved, because even though he stood to personally benefit from slavery if he accepted it, he was like, no, I'm not accepting it. That's why, like John Brown, like if you want to, Like George Washington owned 300 slaves. I don't give a damn about George Washington. This dude, like it, for all of the founding fathers that signed the Declaration of Independence and talked about inalienable rights and then owned human beings. How can you respect that? But then you have somebody like John Brown who's like, no, we know what's right, we know what's wrong, and we know this is wrong, and I'm actually going to do something about it. That's why I found that was interesting, and it's interesting that a lot of more people didn't choose John Brown. But once again, that's when you start talking about the way they talk about history, where they're obscuring certain people from history because they don't want you to look at them. Um, okay, in North Carolina, where I am, there was a Black Wall Street. Yeah, black people got to stop cussing out their customers. Chicago could be a great Black Wall Street, but with all those restrictions and regulations, Chicago, the problems in Chicago are not natural and not accidental at all. At all. The problems that Chicago are facing are not accidental. When you look at the Democrats and Republicans and Democrats, it's the same as the Crips and Bloods. Listen, it's you literally right now have this tribal mentality. This it's not even just tribal, it's team, like this team. And if you're on this team, you have to support whatever this team says. And if you even like just right now on Twitter, Kelsey Grammer, dude from Frasier from Cheers, is trending because he took a picture at Mar-a-Lago. So now you've got a whole bunch of people saying, "Oh, I'm never watching Frasier again." It's like, are you really that simple? Like, just because he's in at Trump's resort, now all of a sudden they hate him. It's that crazy. That's how ridiculous things have gotten right now. Um, as a libertarian, do you lean more anarchist, or you don't mind government, but you identify as an outlaw instead? Um, I would say, listen, I want to see a world where government doesn't exist, and people will say, "Oh no, then there's people die and people kill each other," and I'm like, "Well, people are killing each other now because the government doesn't stop murder from happening. Government is a monopoly on violence." So, in fact, we can see right now, Russia's about to uh, run into Ukraine and kill a bunch of people and then take it. But that's considered civilization because you do an organized slaughter. It's considered civilization as opposed to anarchy. But I know that right now the world isn't ready, especially in the United States, and that's a large part due to public education. People aren't prepared to be in control of their own lives. So there needs to be steps to get there for people to be more comfortable in, hey, we can make our decisions for ourselves. We don't need this group of people who is accountable to no one making decisions for us. We don't need them. We literally don't need them. And if you look at what they did, 2020 should have taught us so much. What they did, the first thing they did in 2020 was they passed a stimulus bill, which wasn't actually a stimulus bill. It was the greatest robbery we've seen in history. The greatest robbery we've seen in history. They just took all of this money and then gave it to their friends. And there was like one congressman, Thomas Massey, who was loudly saying, "Hey, we need to have a vote on the record so everybody knows who voted for what." And then both Republicans and Democrats came together to criticize him. Trump and John Kerry came together, and they were on Twitter congratulating each other in attacking Thomas Massey because Thomas Massey dared to call out the nonsense that the government was doing. I tend to vote for GOP because lesser of two evils. The only politician I like is Ron Paul. I'm not a fan of progressive agenda. Ron Paul is actually how I learned about libertarians. Watching Ron Paul at the presidential debates, and at that point, I had been reading, about Republican strategy, well, Republican policy, their not necessarily their platform, but supposedly their ideology of wanting a small government and limited government. But I wasn't seeing the rhetoric wasn't matching the actions until I saw Ron Paul get up and actually say, "Hey, this is government overreach. This is government overreach." Like he just went across the board and so like was criticizing all of these things that the government overreach. And he even pointed to fellow Republicans to say, you could say Obama's going to increase government, but these guys will do the same thing. They'll just increase it in these areas. Like he's like, so it's really no difference. Um, I can't think of a single president who followed the Bill of Rights or the Constitution to the letter, and that's key. That is so important. And let me tell you why that's so important. Because a lot of people don't realize, and so if you start looking at history, you'll realize that something like the Fourth Amendment. People are complaining about government invading privacy now. Government didn't just start doing this. There are so many carve outs and exceptions to the Fourth Amendment that it's virtually like it's almost gone. The Fourth Amendment is almost gone. And so when you look at something like Amir Locke, that's the young brother that was shot in Minnesota last week in his apartment. Well, in an apartment with a gun, with a legally owned firearm, and the police do a no-knock warrant, break into his apartment, and shoot him because he has a gun, which he was legally allowed to have. That's the Fourth Amendment issue. But it's because of all of these carve-outs that they keep making to the Fourth Amendment that has it where it's becoming more and more useless with every day that passes. And with every new law that passes, every new restriction that they create, it's becoming more and more useless and more without power. You ever thought about making video essays on it of our history? Yeah, that's definitely something I could look into. Definitely. I'd probably say I'm libertarian light. Corporations act equally as bad as the government. Listen, corporations are bad. The a bunch of corporations are bad, and a lot of corporations like to use the government to to serve their interests. So they'll like even now, Amazon is pushing for a $15 minimum wage. Why? Not because they care about the people, but because they want to crush competition. Amazon knows that they can withstand a higher minimum wage, whereas they know smaller businesses, smaller corporations will not be able to keep up. And what happens? These other businesses crumble. Amazon takes over. It's really sad. Chicago is my hometown. White libs and Republican don't see themselves as white. Um, Interesting that that's something that they said in the episode. They talked about how white whiteness in the United States, whiteness is something that is seen as that it's something that they can just leave beside, so that it's not something that they. Whereas if they if a black person does something, black people have done something. Whereas a white person does something, that white person did something. It's not something as, oh, white people are responsible for this. But whereas when you're dealing with a black person, and this is what one of the guys was talking about, he was like, he was talking to a white person and they were like, no, that I don't do that. And he couldn't understand it because when he would be on the train and there's a black mother yelling at her child, he's like he feels ashamed for her, and as if he feels that it's like, okay, they're looking at us, not just at her as being as have doing this. They're looking at black people as a whole, and so he feels ashamed. But he talked to a white friend of his or a white coworker of his who said, "No, we don't feel that. Like we just if a white person, if that white mother's yelling at her white child, it's okay. It's that white person is doing that. It's not something that they view as a whole." Um, and interesting thing. So one of the other points they talk about was because when we talk about history, when we talk about the founders, when we talk about okay, yeah, so the founding fathers, they may have owned slaves, but that was a different time. Like I've already talked about John Brown, and if you take a look at the Declaration of Independence, you take a look at the Constitution, the slavery was directly in opposition to these documents. They knew full well that this was not morally right. And you know how they know? And a further evidence was because slavery was never universally accepted. There were always people who were saying, no, this is wrong. So from the very beginning, from the founding of this country, that even though it was the an accepted institution, even though it was a government supported and government imposed institution, there were people who were saying, "No, this is wrong. This shouldn't be happening." From the very beginning, uh, and then we move forward when we have the Civil War, because the Civil War happens, and now you have the slavery is actually dismantled officially. Well, mostly 13th Amendment. Um, Save for the 13th Amendment, slavery is officially dismantled. Uh, but the interesting thing about the Civil War is when these monuments start popping up. And they didn't pop up back then. They popped up 20th century for a reason. And so you have individuals in the video who are talking about how why they look at these monuments as something that should be taken down. Because people will say, oh no, they're trying to erase our history. But these monuments to Confederate generals aren't American history. So, because remember, the Confederacy was a separate government. You had the United States of America, that was one government, and then you had the Confederate States of America. That was a separate government. It was like they were at war. And by the U.S. law, they were considered treasonous. They had committed treason. So when people are saying, and I didn't even realize this till well, not maybe a couple of years ago, a few years ago, I didn't realize that there were bases, military bases, that exist today named after Confederate generals. How do you name military installations in your countries after a government that went to war with your country? Like that's mind-boggling. That's mind-boggling. But it's one of those things is why does that exist? But a lot of people do not want to have these discussions. They do not want because it makes people uncomfortable. Um, okay, so white libs and Republicans don't see themselves white. Trump spent more money than Obama in his 8 years. There was nothing about Donald Trump that was fiscally conservative. Nothing. Nothing. And there's a reason for that. Because you got to remember, for how long was Donald Trump a Democrat? Donald Trump was a Democrat in New York. Donald Trump donated money to Hillary. Donald Trump donated money to Chuck Schumer. Donald Trump donated, is either Donald or Ivanka donated to Kamala Harris when she was running in California. So yeah, there was nothing about Trump was fiscally conservative. He had no problem spending money. And the interesting thing is that all of those Republicans that most of those Republicans that claim to be fiscally conservative had no problem signing off on all those checks that he was writing. PJ. Officer Tatum tried to pander to his audience and say Amir's killing was justified, and his audience disagreed. Wow, that's crazy. That's crazy. When you're trying to pander in virtue signal, and they call you out. Wow. When he's trying to pander and they called him out. That's interesting. That's interesting. Wow, that's interesting. James, Even the founders didn't follow their own rules to the teeth. They owned slaves, and Washington was taxing whiskey, which wasn't taxation. One of the reasons why they went to war. Yep, hypocrites. Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, there's so much hypocrisy throughout the historical record, and it's why I say it's funny because I had this conversation with somebody, and they're talking about, well, okay, so George Washington owned slaves. Yeah, the Confederates, they were bad, but so who are we supposed to honor? And I'm like, why are you honoring men? Why are you building statues to men? Like, if you want to like certain things they did, like certain things, like stand on principle as opposed to worshiping men, because we're at a point where if you say something bad about a certain historical figure, people will want to fight you. Like, that's how bad it is, because people are putting human beings, and in a lot of cases some very reprehensible human beings, on these pedestals, and like acting like they're figures to be veneered. Like, no, you shouldn't be. Why are you putting such giving such honor to men, especially men that have done so much harm, that have done so much evil, and by your refusal to acknowledge their evil, like, you don't realize how much problems are like right underneath the surface. So if you want to take a look at law, like these mandates, the current mandates that people are complaining about, like in Canada, they're shutting down um, roadways and traffic, and in the U.S. they're like, oh, this is absurd. In New York, they're going to these restaurants and museums, and they're like basically doing sit-ins. Oh no, we shouldn't be banned from this just because we don't have the jab. And people on the left will say, oh well, this isn't new. They've been mandating jabs since, for years, for decades. And they'll talk about the public schools, but then they'll do something else. They'll talk about a court case. They'll talk about a Supreme Court case from 1905. They will talk about that court case and say, see, that court case shows that the government allows, here in the United States, the government is allowed to mandate the jab. And people will miss the point, because if you realize that that's what happened, if you realize that the government has given itself this power for over 100 years, and we're just talking about this specific aspect of government overreach. For over 100 years, the government has given itself this power, but you're just now noticing it. You are just now noticing it. That's the problem. We haven't been paying attention, and we need to start paying attention, because if you really want to start realizing that, wait a minute, that means what that means is what doesn't mean that tyranny has just started. It means that tyranny's been here. Tyranny's been here for 116 years, at least 116 years, and nobody noticed, or at least we didn't notice, because we were sitting here thinking everything was gravy, thinking everything was cool, and then New York City says, okay, boom, you can't work, you cannot work if you don't have the jab. And now people are realizing that, wait, we have a problem. We've been had a problem. We've been had a problem with how much government overreach there is. We've been had a problem with how little the government was following its own rules, with how little the government was adhering to the Constitution, with how readily the government was violating people's rights. This government was founded on violating people's rights. It just made excuses. But as long as people are willing to turn a blind eye to that, they don't realize what their government is truly capable of. The argument people make is Southern pride. Same reason why some people like to hold the Confederate flag. I mean, yeah, I know what they're saying, but it's How can you be a patriot of America, of the United States of America, while celebrating the country that went to war with the United States of America? It seems kind of contradictory. I'm just saying. If like holding the American flag and the Confederate flag, these are opposite flags. They went to war, like one of the most bloodiest wars in history, and was one of the bloodiest war in American history. One of the bloodiest wars in American history, and they went to war against each other. But you're carrying, like, you're waving both flags. Okay, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Um, and so, interestingly enough, they talk about how America. One individual says he sees America as having, and to touch on that point, he sees America as being something, a country that fights for freedom, not just for ourselves, but for others. Even though America hasn't always lived up to that. But the point is, are we willing to acknowledge that? Are we willing to look at history and say, yeah, you're right. America hasn't lived up to its ideals. But and this is what a lot of people in the show were talking about. That you have so many white people that want to believe in America so much that they are willing to ignore the reality of what America has done. They want to have this idealistic view of America, and they want to ignore the things that America has done and continues to do. And if you're not willing, because if you're not willing to acknowledge what America has done, like I said, you're going to be at a position where you won't realize what America is about to do to you. You won't realize it, and until that boot's on your neck. And right now, we're seeing all over the country, we're seeing people start to realize that, start to awaken to that realization. Unfortunately, I think that they have awakened to this realization, and as soon as certain restrictions lift, then they'll just forget about it, and they'll go back to telling themselves the lies that they've been telling themselves about how America is the ideal, and how it and convince themselves that America is living up to that ideal. Um, White privilege is something else that they talk about in this show. And I know that there's a lot of people that don't like to talk about white privilege. But if you talk, like, it's interesting, and I'm going to talk about it in terms of how they talked about it, because I see that there's a different way it could be framed, but I definitely understand where they're coming from. And they talk about white privilege as how it was originally created, in terms of when the first indentured servants came over here in 1619. Indentured servants came over, and you had white indentured servants and black indentured servants. And what they did was they said, okay, they then created a separation, whereas the white indentured servants could work for a period of time and earn their freedom, own property and everything, so on and so forth. The black indentured servants, no, this is a lifetime thing. And not only is this a lifetime status, it now became hereditary. So that's where chattel slavery comes in. And that's the level at which it reached, where it was like different from previous times. Because like the indentured servants, they could work and earn their freedom. Okay, you've put in enough years. You had basically a contract of this amount of time. You paid off that contract. Okay, you're free now. You can go about your business. Whereas they created a separate rule for blacks, like, no, you can't own property. This is a lifetime status, and it's hereditary. So that not only you are a slave, but your children are slave. Your children's children will be slaves. And that was the creation of white privilege, where they made a distinction of how white people and black people were treated. But they did this intentionally. They did this to create, to placate poor white people, because it's funny. Somebody says in the episode, and they talk about how the elites, the slaveholders, and the white elites, these politicians and landowners, they would convince that poor white people that their problem was black people, when in reality, the poor white people's problem was them. It was them. They were the ones that were impoverishing and exploiting these poor white people. But by creating white privilege, they gave them something to feel, okay, well, at least we're not as bad as these people. At least we have something. They gave them, they even if they didn't have property, even if they didn't own land, even if they didn't have wealth, they had a status that left them better off than this other group of people. And that was the creation of white privilege. Uh, and that's why, like I said, that's why the history, understanding the history is like, it's real, and it's actually encoded into law. So you can actually look at court cases, and there's the court case of when they saying, okay, no, this person is black, they can't own, they can't own property. This person is they have a lifetime of slavery. This person is black. Their children are property of the, not even of the parent. The children are property of the slave owner, for the slave owner to do with as they see fit. It's like it's encoded in law. There's actual case law that discusses this and reveals that this is what was an actual legal status that was created. The rights ignorance of okay, the rights ignorance of history shows when they say they hate the Dems, yet I've only seen the right hold the flag of treasonous Democrats. Yeah, like that's another thing that people don't realize, but they didn't even talk about it. Okay, by the way, clearly this show is made by people who are on the left. They're willing to acknowledge certain things about race, which is an opportunity that the right constantly misses. An opportunity to discuss, if the right was willing to be real about history, they could talk about history and then talk about the Republicans' roles in history and the Democrats' role in history. But they don't even want to discuss the history. They don't want to acknowledge it because they feel it's too uncomfortable, and they allow the left to completely own the narrative. So even though the left is talking about all of these things that are happening, they're talking about the Confederacy, they're talking about the slave owners. What they're not telling people is that these are Democrats. You're right. They're not talking about that these are Democrats doing these things. They're not talking about this. And right now, and it's crazy because they began this episode with talking about January 6th. Now that then they go back into history, they're talking about the Confederacy, they're talking about slave owners, and then it just creates this. If you don't know the history, it creates this image in your mind of, oh, Republicans. The Republicans were the party of January 6th. They're the party, they're clearly the same people that had these attitudes towards black people in the past, not knowing that the Republican Party was an abolitionist party. It was created like, hey, we're opposed to slavery. That's how the Republican Party was created. Um, but these are details that they don't discuss in this. So I'm not sitting here going to say that this show is great, it's awesome, it's amazing, it's the best show ever. No, it's interesting, and it raises topics that we can discuss and that we should be discussed, but that a lot of people are afraid to discuss because a lot of white people will feel uncomfortable about this. And there's black people that are pandering to the white audiences that don't want to be real with their white audiences about race. So they will tell their white audiences that, oh, Joe Rogan saying the N word, that's not a problem. That's not racist. But in the video right before, they will say that Eric Adams should be canceled and should have to resign for using the C word about white people. Like in the video right before. So you've got videos that's were dropped like within a couple of hours of each other, maybe, because they're dated the same day. And one is telling white people that, hey, yeah, Eric Adams is a racist because he called white people the C word, but Joe Rogan's not a racist for using the N word. No, that's not racist. That's not racist at all. In fact, people need to get over that. But this is the kind of pandering that is happening, and why, if this is who they're following, if this is who they're watching, they're never going to be, they're never going to get real, frank, honest discussions about race. There's not going to be any healing. There's not going to be any reconciliation. There's not going to be any moving forward if you're not willing to have uncomfortable discussions about race. And that means with each other. So, like, I really think uh, for all the people that are going to watch, watch these reactions to the trailer and just like, yeah, that they're racist. Like, you're missing the point, because they're saying stuff that, hey, you might want to hear this. You might want to hear what black people are really saying and how they really feel, and acknowledge, okay, wait, that makes some kind of sense, because a lot of the stuff they're saying, a lot of the points they make sense. And a lot of, I mean, there's points in here that white people that even the white people that like Tatum would agree, they would agree with. But because all they saw was that preview, and then they have, these black faces who just put on the capes and lie to them, they'll never watch it. They'll never know. Um, the same people, okay, the same people who disagree with white privilege believe black privilege exists. Some people attack me because I have white privilege, because I have light skin. I'm Hispanic and grew up poor, so I get annoyed when people say I have white privilege. So now the interesting thing is and I'm trying to think about the trailer, because in the trailer I know you see Amanda Seales, you see Willie D, and then you see that other brother. He's like a photographer. He's got a scruffy beard. But as I said, Margaret Cho, she's Asian. You've got some Hispanic brothers and sisters in the video as well. And like one sister, she's talking about how she's talking about how her father was Afro. I want to say Afro Peruvian, and so he was like, he would be outside in front of the house doing some kind of work, and the white neighbors would be complaining, oh, you're making noise, oh, this is disruptive, oh, you shouldn't be doing this. And she saw the treatment that he went through just because, just because of the color of his skin. And so, I mean, I definitely get what you're saying, because this they talk about the creation of the racial hierarchies and how it was white and like almost everything else. So they created this status, because it was about more than race, and race was more than just about bloodline. It was like, it's a sense of status. So this is um, the preferred status, and then we're creating these others, and that's everybody else. Okay, some people who said that. Okay, truth teller. Who said what? I agree 100%. There needs to be honest and frank discussions. Absolutely, truth teller. Mostly woke people at my college job. Yeah, Yeah, I wish this would. Yeah. Um. So yeah. So I mean, but yeah, like I said, there's so many interesting points that they talk about this. They talk about the okay. So yeah, let's talk about the Amanda Seals part because she's in the video, and I know that's the scene that triggered so many people. The what annoys you most about white people, and it's funny to see. It is funny to see. It's not just because I'm thinking about it. Brandon Tatum has said some real crazy things about black people, just crazy off the wall things. Basically, called black people demon possessed. And so, like, if you've made this, if you've made these statements about black people, and then you see somebody say, "Oh, what annoys me most about white people," and you get offended, it's like you said worse about black people, and you've made it like just these blanket statements. But the thing is, once you see what Amanda Seales says, like I think almost, I'll say at least, I'll guess 90% of the people who criticized that trailer, because they haven't, because there's all these critiques of this show, the critiques of the trailer, because there's so many people were making videos about this, were mad about this, were up in arms about this, and they never even saw the show. All they saw was the trailer. So despite just seeing the trailer, they saw that scene from Amanda Seales and they just lost it. And what Amanda Seales basically says is she's sick of white people. She's annoyed of white people playing victim. Now, if that is racist, if it is racist for Amanda Seales to say that she is sick of white people and annoyed by white people playing victim, that means all 90% of the people that are complaining about Amanda Seales, complaining about this show, everything's going to be all right, have to look at themselves because they have used that same talking point about black people constantly, non-stop. They use that talking point every day. Like it's the talking point they wake up with in the morning. They wake up in the morning and say, before they even say good morning, black people need to stop playing victim. They say it all the time. It's like their mantra. They are constantly pushing, oh, black people are playing victim, this victimhood mentality. This is their mantra. Amanda Seales just flipped it on them. I'm sick of white people playing the victim card. I'm sick of white people pretending to be victims. And if you look what's happening right now, there's a lot of that happening. A lot of that happening. Okay. Oh, okay. Truth teller. Who said that someone saying, okay, that was, that's Tatum. If you look at Tatum's channel, if you look at the video that he has a video about the Rogan, right before the Rogan video is a video about Eric Adams. The very, like, they're right next to each other. They're right next to each other. It's crazy. They are right next to each other, and it's like you couldn't see the blatant hypocrisy. It was just absurd. It is. It's crazy when you see this. Like you put these videos out right next to each other, and in one you're saying Eric Adams needs to be fired and he's a racist, and then in the next you're saying, oh, that's no big deal. People need to stop being so sensitive about words. What? Wow! Like you can't make this stuff up. You cannot make this stuff up. Yeah, it's on Tatum's channel. Yeah, it is. It's really ridiculous. In fact, it is. Okay, so Tackler, did you see the entire all white video Tatum did? He legit sounds like Ruckus at the end. So listen, I didn't see, the only part I saw of it was Amazing Lucas was doing a reaction on it briefly, and he starts it, and it starts off with Tatum going, disgusting. That's as far as I got. That's as far as I got. Because it's comical. It's like a cartoon show. He's like a cartoon character. You really can't make this stuff up. He didn't watch. He watched the trailer, and he's like, I guess he's a prognosticator. He's psychic. He knows everything that's in the episode now. But because he has to put on the show for his wide audience to convince them that I'm on your side. You're always right. They're always wrong. I'm one of the good ones. You can trust me. Like that's the message he's sending to his audience. That's the message he's preaching to his audience. It's pure virtue signaling, and it doesn't serve them. It doesn't do them any good. It definitely doesn't do black people any good because the images and the negative stereotypes that he promotes to his audience, but it doesn't do them any good because he's lying to them, and they don't understand. They have no true insight into how black people are feeling. He's just catering to their ego and just playing to the white fragility. Um, but yeah, Amanda Seales section it's really not. They played that because they knew it would look. Yeah, yeah. Facts. Too many people on the right constantly say that they're tired of black people playing victim. I hear them say it all the time from Canada. Yep. Tatum. Okay. Now I haven't even. Okay, I can't see the rest of the statement. Once I see the rest of the statement, Tatum said we should be thanking the white. They have a line like that inside the show. So in the show they have this. I think there's like a couple of white guys in the show that they'll spout their talking points interspersed with the commentary from the black, Hispanic, and Asian people who are talking. And so the white guys, one of the talking points the white guy says is, in fact, it's right at the beginning. He says it. He says, uh, "You need to thank white people because without white people, you wouldn't have cool stuff like the internet." Which is funny because I guess I have to watch the Tatum video now. I have to watch it because if he's unironically spouting talking points like that's crazy. That's crazy. That's crazy. Man, that's crazy. It's um okay. So now there's one when they start talking about white fragility, people are talking about how white people have responded to criticism and they don't want to talk about race and anything that makes them uncomfortable. They're trying to whitewash it, and they're basically saying like that's the purpose of whitewashing history and lying about history because white people don't want to face the reality of history. But there's one guy, and I think he's an Hispanic brother, and he says, um, what's your opinion on um, what's your opinion on white fragility?" And he says, "Whiteness isn't fragile to me. It's loud. It's abrasive. It's aggressive." And I'm like, wow, that was a powerful point. That was a powerful point because it's amazing the narrative of what's been shaped around whiteness and how even black people have internalized that definition. So you have, in the hood, you the mentality that yeah, if some white dude walks in here, oh, he's a sucker, he's nothing to worry about, he's no threat. Really, like just take a look at how the violence that white people have visited upon the globe. And so for people to look at a white person and feel, oh, he's non-threatening, is not reflective of reality. Like, there's white people who have done some serious damage throughout. Throughout the country, throughout the world. And if you want to look at it as a whole, white countries, or if you want to look at it white individuals, you could look at a Dylan Roof. You could look at somebody like Dylan Roof, and still people will see a white dude and think, oh, he's not threatening, not realizing that he could very well be a Dylan Roof, but you're sleeping on him. I just saw footage of uh, purportedly the it's on Twitter, and they're saying it's a bunch of Bloods beating up like a neo-Nazi skinhead, and he looks like, he's got the shaved head. He looks like it looks like he was wearing fatigues or something. So he may have actually been that. But they're going at him, they're punching him and everything, and I'm like, if he is like a white supremacist, like somebody who's actually involved in an organization, they really were not paying attention to the threat he could potentially pose. Because these dudes that are affiliated with those organizations, like, they're not a joke. Like, these are some dangerous people, incredibly dangerous people. And in this case, they may have been lucky that he wasn't armed, that it appeared he wasn't armed, because, quite frankly, in most cases, an individual like that is going to be armed, and he will have absolutely no problem just indiscriminately doing what he does. But it's this mentality, this image, that's the way that this narrative has been pushed. And like this guy says, yeah, there's nothing, like, I don't see whiteness as fragile. No. And I said, that's a really good point. Because if you're looking at it in terms of um, whiteness being presented as non-threatening, like, what evidence do we have of that? The history, the present doesn't reflect that reality. Like, that's the narrative that has been pushed through the media. So the media will take these images of they'll take this image of the black thug and promote it all over the world. All over the world. They'll promote it in music videos, they'll promote it in Hollywood TV shows and Hollywood movies. And all over the world, people that in foreign countries that don't even interact with black people will have this image of what a black person is, because the media presented this image. And conversely, that same media will present another image of white people and and whiteness as being non-threatening, just cool, nothing to be afraid of, nothing to be worried about. Absolutely, despite the fact that if you just look at history, you'd be like, yeah, that's not accurate. That's not at all accurate. That's spin. True, it's virtue signaling. The root of American problems is central banking. Central banking is definitely a big problem. I think too many put white people on a pedestal. Um, I think there are. So listen, and separate from this, it's not as evident in this particular episode. I think it will come out in other episodes, especially because I think, like Amanda Seales, things I've seen her appear to say lean towards this type of mentality, where I think there are some people, and there's a lot of people on the left that do have this, that their issues with white people seem to stem from like this feeling of rejection. They feel rejected by white people, and so they really want to be loved and accepted by white people. And if you want to take a look at Angela Rye crying on CNN because some white dude was racist was just crazy. It was crazy. It was crazy. It was like, if you shouldn't be, it doesn't seem rational to me to be that invested in somebody else's opinion of you, especially like just it's just. But there is a tendency, I think, particularly among people, certain black people on the left, not everybody, not every black person on the left, but there's a segment of the population of black people on the left that do are just so preoccupied with white people that they like that they that they make an entire show about white people. I think that there's some rational discussion in this particular episode, but the fact that the episode is centered about around whiteness is something I find interesting, because like Black History Month, I would have made a show centered around blackness, and at some point white people may be a character that we interact with. Whiteness may be a a side, a guest, make a guest appearance in the story, but the story, like if that's how like my story is not centered about how I can get along with whiteness. Like no, I'm focused on black. I'm black. I'm focused on me. My world does not revolve around white people. It doesn't. But there does seem to be people on the left, black people on the left, who are who do have this, then to do as you said, Javier, who tend to put white people on the pedestal, and it's and I think it's part of the programming. It's part of the, like we just talked about with the media, this image that the media has presented, where they've centered um, whiteness as being good, and then they center blackness as being negative. And there are people who have internalized that, people who have allowed that to become, that programming to become their reality. Officer Tatum probably thinks, wow. Like, listen, I could, as crazy as it sounds, I could see, like, I'm thinking of what he could say about that. I'm imagining him coming up with some justification as to why that would, of him justifying Dylan Roof's actions, and saying Dylan Roof wasn't necessarily bad. I can imagine him saying something that ridiculous. I really could imagine that. Um, Basically, tap dancing for acceptance by white leftist liberals, just like their counterparts on the right. And yes, you're so right. There's so much of this where you've got you've got those on the right that are doing their tap dancing. You've got those on the left doing their tap dancing, and it's like, this is like, how about just being, how about realizing that if you need to do that tap dancing in order to be accepted by them, they don't really like you. They don't really respect you. Like, if the right, if these white conservatives really respected Tatum, he wouldn't need to do all that tap dancing. If these white liberals and leftists really respected Roland Martin, he wouldn't need to do that tap dancing. Like, if they really did, like, you wouldn't need to do all this catering and pandering to them if they really respected you, as a man, as a woman, as a black person. If they really respected you, you wouldn't need to do all of that extra stuff. You would be able to just speak your mind, be yourself, and they sometimes they would agree with you, sometimes they wouldn't, but they would acknowledge you as being, an intelligent, competent person. I agree 100%. The story should have focused around Black people. Our story is rich without them. Yeah, it's Black History Month. None of the regular tap dance has covered anything related to that. Yeah, they don't want to. In fact, um, isn't he the one that said he actually did a video that said he's not celebrating Black History Month, and it's like, yeah, this dude is an absolute clown. And if you listen, in fact, oh man, I actually just realized I haven't listened to the latest Sonny Johnson episode. I've got to listen to it after this. But one thing she talks about is she goes into the history of Black History Month, of how it started as Negro History Week, and how it was started by Carter Woodson, who was a Black Republican and was trying to keep that relationship in people's minds. And so it's amazing. Like, once again, these opportunities are there, but because people like Tatum don't know history, he doesn't know. Like, dude doesn't like to read. Like, and it's just like him, like his boss. They don't like to read. They don't. They're so they just spout stuff that they have no knowledge of, and it shows. But there's an opportunity there if you're talking about how Negro History Week was started by Carter G. Woodson, and there's a definitive link to Republicans. So if you wanna make a build a bridge, there's there's material for you to build a bridge, but but for whatever reason you just want to spout talking points. Okay, so James, nah, I don't see him justifying Dylan Roof because he defended Trayvon Martin and was against Zimmerman. Okay, I didn't know he was against Zimmerman. I didn't know he was against Zimmerman. Yeah, that was because I know like somebody like and I saw some really bad takes about the whole Trayvon Martin and Zimmerman case, and people ignoring that Zimmerman basically stated a case for why he didn't basically, he absolutely stated a case and a definitive reason for why Trayvon Martin was defending himself. Like you stalked him in a vehicle. He's running from you. He's running from you. He's afraid. He's running from you for his safety. You chase him. You get out of your vehicle and chase him. Clearly, he was afraid for his safety. You pursued him. You were the aggressor. Trayvon Martin was standing his ground. But then politics, because you had people like Sharpton who wanted to fight, who didn't want to support the stand your ground law, so they missed an opportunity to provide the actual defense or the actual basis for how that case could have been won. Is that no, you weren't standing your ground. Trayvon Martin was standing his ground. He was the one that was in fear for his safety and fear for his life, and clearly, justifiably so. Um, all the right has done so far for Black History Month is mock and belittle us so far. What's funny is somebody put up Fox News has a like this graphic, um, Happy Black History Month celebrating diversity, and then they put Laura Ingram's show, and she's got a segment criticizing diversity and inclusion, and Tucker Carlson has something doing the same thing, and it's like it's kind of funny. It really is funny. Um, and back to the show. The show, like I said, how the show starts with January 6th, it ends with January 6th. Well, it goes back about the 48-minute mark talking about January 6th. And that was like the thing that I found most disingenuous about it. But that's my perspective. As I think about it, black people on the left, I believe that they do believe it is that January 6th was rooted in white supremacy. I disagree. I disagree wholeheartedly because, like I said, I see January 6th as an outlet for the frustration from 2020. Because you've got to realize what 2020 was had such a profound effect on all of us, on all of us. And it manifested in various ways. So you had the George Floyd protest, because I don't think the George Floyd protest would have been as big. There may have been some. It would not have been as big as nationwide, even in other countries, had there not been the absolute chaos that was 2020. And I also think that the January 6th wouldn't have popped off the way it did had they not been, those same people not been feeling the effects and the fear. A lot of it was fear. The fear and uncertainty about where their lives were headed, where the country was headed, if it had not been for the 2020. So I think that was such a pivotal. I think that was more so the basis for that event than anything else. And it's funny because the show, and if you watch the show and you watch it till after the credits, I recommend watching it till after the credits because Willie D has a statement in it that is really, really good. And yeah, I mean, and I'm curious to see where they go from this in the following episodes. I don't know if the following episodes are going to be free as well, or if they're just making the first episode free so that anybody can watch it, and then draw you in so you'll pay for Showtime to watch the rest of the series. But like I said, it was an interesting series. It was an interesting episode, and I think it's a discussion that these are discussions that we need to have, because even no, it wasn't Trayvon Martin. It was Ferguson. I remember seeing a special they had. I forgot who did it, but they did this special after Ferguson, and they had white people and black people there having a more trying to have a discussion with race, trying to have a frank discussion with race, and I want to see more of that done, because I think that's critical to understanding, and it depends on who's having discussion, because there's certain people that you can have the discussion with, and it can be a productive discussion, even if you don't all everybody doesn't end up on the same page, where you can have a discussion that doesn't descend into just ridiculousness, and that people can have walk away having some better, just a slightly better understanding of their counterparts. But as long as people stay stuck in their echo chambers, that's not going to happen, you know. And that's one of the things. Social media has some good things about it, but it definitely has some drawbacks, in that you have social media creates echo chambers, and people just get to congratulate themselves, pat themselves on the back, and marvel at their own magnificence, despite the fact that they may not even be making a lot of sense. Um, I am not watching a show that does not but inflate certain individuals' ego. Oh, Javier Sons, do you consider mixed people black? Um, Here's the thing: if you have a white mother and a black father, are you black? I don't believe in the one drop rule. So the one drop rule was the one drop rule treated black blood as poison. So to illustrate what I say, if you have a cup of soda, cup of ginger ale, you have it's ginger ale. If you take a drop of poison, you put the drop of poison in there. I'm not going to say, oh yeah, I have a ginger ale. I'm saying it's poison. This is poison. This whole cup, this whole glass is poison because you put a drop of poison in there. That's what they were treating black blood as. So one drop of black blood was poison. It defiled, the bloodstream and thus made it impure in their mind. So that's why they considered um, mixed people black. You could have any an eighth. You can have an eighth of blackness in you, and they would consider you black, not because they were saying, because there's a lot of people that think they're saying, oh no, but it's because the black genes are dominant. No, what they're saying with that is that black blood is poison. I do not believe that. I do not agree with that. I do not subscribe to that. So if you have a white parent, black parent, you're biracial. I have no problem with the person realizing, no, I'm not. I'm mixed. I have, I have two parents. I love both of my parents, and I'm going to acknowledge both of their existence. I have no problem with that. It's funny though that there is a um, culturally or racially. A mixed person may be racially black but culturally white. Um, yeah, I mean, and then it also depends on where they grew up, and then you'll have some people who may identify with one side more than the other, especially based on their appearance. So if you have somebody who has a white parent but they're still darker, then they'll identify. They will most often identify as black because they're physically they look black. But speaking of that, there is a there's a the first black. What did they say? This is like this first in the Olympics. Um, Let me see if I can pull that up. It's kind of interesting. There was this woman. Um, they're saying she's like the first black woman to win a certain medal at the Olympics, at the Winter Olympics. And if they didn't say she was okay, I don't know how they are calling her black. I don't understand it. I do not understand it because I just don't understand it. If you look at this woman, there's I don't understand how they're calling her black, but they are calling her black. It's it's first black Olympics. Um, okay, I can't even find it. I'll probably post it on the community tab. But it's yes, she does not look at all black, and I'm like, I don't know how they fix their mouths to even say that, but they're it's fact. It's very hard to classify mixed race individuals visually. I police cases, airport scans. Many mixed race people look Hispanic or Italian. Yeah, and then yeah, and so there's some mixed race people who there are people who literally say like, "Oh, what are you?" and they don't know if they're Hispanic, Italian, Arab, like they just don't know. And then you could have people who have various mixtures, and that's where we're at as a society, where that's not as where like as one time when it was actually against the law for people to mix interracially and marry interracially. Now you have a lot more interracial marriage, and so you'll have people. Um, but the part is we haven't dealt with all these issues yet. We haven't we haven't dealt with the underlying problems. We haven't addressed the history, not in an honest way. So there's still a lot of tension remaining. I heard that main reason why Dr. Umar is against interracial marriage. Huh. Okay. So it's first Black Winter. Okay, let me show you. First Black Winter. Um, first Black um, Skeleton. Okay. Okay. Um, so where is this? Okay, yeah, I'm gonna pull it up now. First Black Skeleton. Um, okay, yeah. So let's pull this up. Okay, let me give it. It's this chick right here. It looks like here she has some freckles, but here this picture is like, yeah. In fact, they say Happy Black History Month. Kelly Curtis is making history at the Winter Olympics as the first Black woman to compete on Team USA skeleton team. I spoke with her family about the accomplishment. Yeah, like this is the picture I've seen of her. So yeah, this is what makes me like, okay, if you say so. If you say so. Yeah, it's kind of yeah, it looks this sounds like something that would come from the Babylon Bee. Yeah, I'm looking at this and I'm like, did they get the right picture? Is this a different? Is this her teammate? I'm like, I don't think that's the right woman. Like, did your did you put the wrong picture up? Because but I'm looking everywhere I go. They're showing that same picture. Except now I seen another picture. You can see a little bit of freckles, but it's like, yeah, that's a stretch. It's a stretch. It's definitely a stretch. Um, what's this called? Um, Alchemist. Interesting. The Alchemist. Interestingly, he also believes if you are mixed, you're black. This sounds like, oh my god. Truth teller. That's. I looked at that picture. I looked at that picture and like, what? like, like what? Like Rachel Dolezal. Rachel Dolezal looked blacker than this woman. That, that's just me. But that's just me. But they're telling me that this woman, and they're promoting it as black this is the first black skeleton player. Uh, and I'm like, okay, if you say so. If you say so. Biracial is biracial. Nothing wrong with that, but it needs to be called for what it is. Obama wasn't black, right? Yeah, and but the biracial dilemma supports your one drop argument, sir. The people are almost always accepted by black people, but almost never accepted by white. I say the same thing. They call us poison. Yeah, yeah. It was never meant as like because there's a lot of times I've heard black people think refer to that as if it's a positive. I'm like, no, it was never intended as a positive. It was always intended as something like less than. So I and yeah, I'm never going to just go with it because, but like I said, you'll have people who may identify with black, may be raised around black, may just like even culturally, they may just gravitate towards blackness, and I get it. Sidney McLaughlin is mixed race, but is darker than this Winter Olivia. This debate is one that is popular among neo Nazis and the black conscious community. Sidney McLaughlin. Okay, I don't know what she looks like. Sidney McLaughlin. Sydney. Sidney McLaughlin. Okay, yeah, she. Okay, yeah, Sidney McLaughlin. She looks like yeah, definitely. I can see it in all of the features. Um, Kamala Harris is mixed too. She refers. Listen, Kamala Harris refers to herself as whatever she needs to in the moment. If she's on the Breakfast Club, she's black. If I'm that truth teller, yeah. Rachel Dolezal really did look, yeah. Um, yeah, will is Kamala Harris is so disingenuous because when she was on with Mindy Kaling. So if you don't know who Mindy Kaling is from The Office, she's the Indian woman, Indian actress from The Office. She was on a show with her, and that's when Kamala Harris was suddenly Indian, just all Indian, not mixed, not part black, not West, pure Indian. That's when she just embraced the Indian. She goes on the Breakfast Club, she's black. Like whatever she needs to be to try to fit in, that's what she does. Kamala Harris is just an opportunist. That's what she is. She she's not black, she's not Indian, she's opportunist. That's what she is. She's opportunistic. That's what Kamala Harris is. Yes, exactly. She's just using that as a political tool. Okay, so you're saying you think it depends on which parent is black. Like I so because I heard somewhere somebody talking about that. Like you are whatever your mother is, or something like that. I think I've heard something about that. Um, and in that case, I guess it might apply to, because if your mother is your primary caretaker, that is who they would, identify you with. Especially like if you're with your mother, if you've got a mother with her child, they're going to identify the child as being whatever the mother is. Uh, so let me see. In fact, yeah, let me pull this. So actually, yeah. Now they, um, okay, that's better. Yeah. So now there's a lot of people talking about this show. So look, yeah, so Shapiro did a response to the trailer, but like I'm saying, all of these all of these criticisms were against the trailer. Like these are people, like the people didn't even watch the episode, but they were up in arms simply because of the trailer of this show. Um, I'm trying to see because it's okay. So this person, loving every minute about rioting every time the fragile. So this is talking about how, in the show they talk about the January 6th, and they tie it to, they're saying like whenever white people don't get their way, they riot, and they lose it. And once again, like I say, I think 2020 election, it's different. It was like, you wasn't your average election, and there was a lot of stuff that happened during the election that gives people reason to be worried. And let's not even talk about whether or not, I'm not trying to say that the election was stolen at the ballot box. If you look at the primaries, just start with Bernie Sanders and what they did in New Hampshire, because I remember that day, when the results came back from New Hampshire, when the results were supposed to come back from New Hampshire, and there was all kinds of irregularities from the jump. Like, so the very first primary state was just a whole bunch of nonsense happening automatically. Like, it's like it was obvious that they were willing to do whatever they needed to do to win that race. Um, this Okay, so look at this. So this is somebody, Showtime. Just show your advertisement for, I guess that was what sponsored racism against white people. Everything's gonna be all right. I can't even begin to count the ways. What a piece of, like this. Like, this is a person who just saw the ad, but they're already saying, "Oh, it's racist against white people." You didn't even watch the show. You haven't even watched the show. Oh yeah, Truth Teller. Hello. So both interviews with Kamala. Agree with you. She's an opportunist. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Um, hey Luke, do you denounce this blatant? Do you denounce this blatant racism being promoted by Showtime? Once again, like these, I'm waiting to see from people that actually watch the show that have these critiques, but they don't, because like they didn't even watch the show. They're watching the preview and getting triggered, and it's funny that these are the people who will call people on the other side snowflakes. Um, the trailer for everything, the trailer for everything ain't everything's gonna be all right, ain't it? Their heart may be in the right place, but to say white people today are responsible for slavery is egregious and completely irresponsible. That trailer does so much damage to the anti-racist movement. So now, that's another scene from the episode that they talk about that probably triggered people. The guy that says it, he makes that statement, but then he then says, like, why not? Like, he doesn't. So I'm not like, he doesn't give any actual like foundation for why he feels that way. But they ask that question of several people. He's the one that answers in that manner. There are other people that have different answers. And so, like, not being able to realize that this is a question that was asked, and you had various people answer the question. But then, of course, this now goes into what Amanda Seales said, and it's about people pretending to be the victim. Because you already got people that are saying, oh, this is anti racist. Oh, they hate white people. Oh, this is crazy. Like, watch the show. Watch the damn show. You're complaining about a show you haven't watched. Um, okay, yeah. So JTS, is the show available? Yes, the show is on Showtime, right? But it's a free episode, so you don't even need to own. You don't even need to have a subscription to Showtime, but you can get the show. You can watch the show for free. Um, I had a roommate who was mixed black and Asian. He mostly applied for black only scholarships because it's easier overall. He said applying for scholarships as Asian person comes off as a disadvantage. So I've heard about that. I know here. So in like New York, we've got these specialized schools, like three of them: Bronx Science. No, it's more than three of them now. Because when I was younger, it was Stuyvesant, Bronx Science, and Brooklyn Tech. And in order to get into these schools, you had to actually take a test. There was a special test to get into these schools because they were like the cream of the crop. And like right now, they were complaining. There were politicians complaining, not the people. Politicians would say, "Oh, we need to get rid of these tests because Black and Hispanic students aren't well represented in these schools. It's just a high amount of Asian students." And I'm like, "That's so." They're presenting this as if they're doing it for the benefit of these Black and Hispanic students, but they're really doing it because they're trying to obscure the fact that their schools, the other schools, are not doing their job. They're trying to obscure how trash everything else has been before. That you've got so many Black and Hispanic students that are not prepared and able to get into these schools. So whereas you've got Asian parents who are maybe either doing additional studies with their kids, or even getting them um, like outside tutors to make sure that they're ready for these types of schools. But it's like the issue isn't. I don't think they. I definitely am firmly against them getting rid of the specialized testing for these schools. If these schools like that, you're trying to obscure the fact that your other schools, your junior high schools, your elementary schools, are that garbage, that kids are not prepared and are not able to take these tests and pass these tests because everything you've done before now hasn't prepared them to be able to succeed or even pass the test to get into these schools. Tacklet. This is white hatred. Yeah, this is exactly what. And there's so many of these. There's so many of this of these types of reactions from people who just watch. Okay, and this is the perfect. This is the perfect picture because she's she's imitating them playing victim, and this is exactly what they're doing. So this guy says Showtime has turned off the comments in their trailer for their racist documentary. Everything gonna be all right. Probably because near all the comments were calling them out. So the same thing that she's criticizing is exactly what all of these people are doing, like in response to this trailer. They're just like, "Oh, this is an attack on white people." Like, watch the damn show. Watch the damn show. It's funny. They did the same thing. Um, there were a lot of people on the right that were doing the same thing when The Hunt came out. So if you don't know, The Hunt was this movie about. It was like originally it was supposed to be called Red State Blue State, where there was like these hunting liberals hunting um, Trump supporters, and they were like, "Oh, they actually got the movie." The movie actually got pulled from the theaters. They postponed it. It came out months later, but because of a bunch of people on the right not even seeing the movie, they just got triggered. Like, "Oh, this is horrible. This is an attack on us." And it's like you might want to watch the movie first because from the trailers, if you're even paying attention to the trailers, it looked like the the protagonists are the Trump supporters. The bad guys are the liberals who are hunting y'all. But it's there's so much reactionary nonsense going on. People who don't even like they're the same way they complain that the left is looking to be outraged. You've got so many people on the right just looking to be outraged. Okay, somebody says, um, Everything's gonna be all right. It's just a Tariq Nasheed doc with establishment money behind it. Once again, didn't even watch it. Most likely, you're really allowing this blatantly racist. Everything's gonna. You're really allowing this blatantly racist show. Everything's gonna be all right, and y'all think this is good for race relations? How? Double standards ain't gonna get us nowhere. You're just stoking the flames. Once again, this is February 7th. The show hadn't even come out yet. He didn't even watch the show, but this individual looks like he's um, putting on his cape. And yeah, and we know Jason Whitlock is going to put on his cape. We know that. He's definitely going to put on his cape. It's amazing. But these, like, I'm really looking for, and I'm going to look to see if I can find any people that actually watched it and then are able to comment on it and then say, hey, oh, I watched it. Okay, it was interesting. Or I didn't agree with this. I agreed with this. But like, watch the show before you lose your minds and go up in arms over everything. Um, Asians do take education pretty serious. My parents didn't care what grades I made in school. My dad wanted me to work in his AC business. Right, right. Kamala's dad is Jamaican, Asian Indian. She is not black at all, just an opportunist. Kamala's mom is from India, and her dad is. I wish I could do something with that. But yeah, I mean, if you just look at it all over Twitter, there's all these, so many people that are just up in arms about this show, and they didn't even watch the show. They didn't even watch the show. Okay, I just canceled Showtime because of the uber racist documentary series called Everything's Gonna Be All White. The series exists just to mock, belittle, and make racist comments about white people. Join me in canceling your Showtime service. Boycott Showtime. So not only do we have somebody here who's triggered, who didn't even watch the show, it's cancel culture. This is cancel. I thought you were all against cancel culture. I thought they were against cancel culture. These people on the right that claim to, oh, I hate cancel culture, but you see a trailer that there's some things in it that you didn't like, and you automatically lose it. Like, if if you saw things in the trailer you didn't like, you might say, yeah, I'm not interested in watching the show. But if you think it's actually gonna be like just like racist, watch it and find out. If you think that there's actually going to be some inflammatory content, or you can just say, I'm not going to watch it. I'm not interested in it. But they're going out of their way. Like, it's like that statement that Amanda Seales makes rings really true when you just see the reactions to the show. Okay, look, everything's gonna be all right is doing a great job exposing fragile white racists who wish to see history they don't like censored and don't like when their mistreatment of people of color is exposed, call out, and refuse to believe that systemic racism still exists. So, like, this is an interesting. I mean, because you've got, if you look at this in the lens of this show, you take this in the lens of the legislation that's passing in states like Florida. Like, you literally have a bill in Florida that's about not causing white people discomfort. You literally have a bill. I'm gonna say this again. You literally have a bill, legislation in Florida that is about making white people feel comfortable. And it's not just in schools. You have it in schools and you have it at workplaces. That you can't, like, a business can't discuss things or have things that make white people feel uncomfortable. You're making a law about making white people feel uncomfortable. If that doesn't speak to white fragility, I mean, what else? Like that's absurd. That makes no sense. And you can't complain about other people playing the victim if you're here making laws to protect your fragile sense of your fragile egos. You can't. Like you can't call other people. You can't claim other people are playing victims. But it's at the point where the answer to answer the question no, no, everything's gonna be all right is not racist. It's not. It's not, because you're not gonna sit here and call it racist if you're accusing white people of playing victim when you spend all day long saying black people are playing victim, and just like it's a major talking point. It's a major talking point among some people on the right, where they're constantly saying it, and it's like, okay, so now when people say white people are playing victim, how is that racist? How it can't be. You can't say it's racist. It's not racist when you're saying that black people are playing victim, and then when they make when the same critique is made about white people, now all of a sudden it's racist. No. And so they don't like what Amanda Seales says. They may not agree with it, but then hey, then have the discussion. Have the discussion that white people aren't playing victim, that they're actual victims. Because the stuff that they're actually legislating against is not. It's like it's petty stuff. Like, what law exists? Like, you cannot. It's crazy. A law that you cannot make, that's about not making white people feel uncomfortable. That's crazy. So let me see. Everyone is pro cancel culture. It just depends on what it is. Yeah, I don't know if you all noticed that, because I've done videos about it in the past, how the right actually created cancel culture. Yes, the right, and I'll do some more videos on it. But the right created cancel culture. Now that they're losing the battle of cancel culture in certain instances, now all of a sudden they complain about it, but they created cancel culture. Let me see. What's that? I can't even. Oh wow, I didn't even think about that. All this time I didn't even. Okay, yeah, I could have been doing that. Yeah, everyone is pro cancel culture. Yeah, all this time I wasn't even realizing I could be putting these statements, these up on screen, and I should have been putting them up. Yeah, that's. Don't worry, I'm getting the hang of streaming. uh, as 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 they say, I'm still struggle streaming. I'm gonna get a handle on this. Trust me, I'm gonna get a handle on this. But thank you, everyone. Thank you for checking out the episode. Thank you for checking out the stream. Thank you, everyone who commented. And I'm getting ready for the Super Bowl. I hope you all enjoy it. By the way, just a quick, everybody who's left. Is anybody watching the Super Bowl? Who y'all got? Who y'all got in the Super Bowl tonight? I may have money on LA. I may have money on LA. Who y'all got? Okay, let me see this. Right? Really? Okay, yeah, I'm definitely going to do a video on that, Truth Teller. I'm definitely going to do a video on the right creating cancel culture. Yeah, I'm gonna put that together. Okay, so um, okay, no, that's not the right one. I kind of get it. There was a Coca-Cola training that told white people to be less white. Okay, there was that Coca-Cola training, right? It told white people to be less white. I'm trying to think of where, because it's been happened so many times where you have where they will tell black people not to be less. They will tell black people not to be black at all. Like in fact, there's been multiple. These conservatives will push, and it's not all conservatives. In fact, there's like if I've spoken about the Civil War within the amongst black conservatives, because there's a group of black conservatives who, hey, we're black, we're conservative, that's what it is. But then there's this other group of black conservatives, well, this other group of so-called conservatives who say, oh, why are you calling yourselves black? You should just be American. And they've got a bunch of white conservatives with them who are saying, yeah, you're not black. Stop being divisive. Just be American. And it's like, wait a minute, but y'all were the same people that were complaining about that Coca-Cola ad. Y'all were complaining about Coca-Cola telling white people to be less white, but you tell black people not to be black at all. They literally will tell black people, don't be black at all. Just be American. But you had a problem with Coca-Cola telling you to be less white. Okay, so truth teller, you just watching the halftime show? Yeah. Well, okay, so in addition to watching the game, I want to see I want to see the ads, because I'm thinking there's going to be some serious movie ads today. I was expecting Nope to be one of those ads. Nope is the new Jordan Peele movie coming out. I think it's coming out in July. And they teased the trailer yesterday. They teased like a 30-second little clip, but the trailer actually came out. So the first trailer came out already. I don't know if they're gonna have another one during the Super Bowl, but I saw it. I watched it a couple of times. It looks like another banger. It looks good, because Jordan Peele, like, he really knows how to put a story together. And Nope looks it's weird because there's so much mystery to the trailer. You don't exactly know what's going on. You're watching the trailer, you're like, huh, what is this? Like I said, I watched it a couple of times, but I'm looking forward to seeing that. But I'm expecting a Black Adam trailer to drop today. And it looks like Black Adam is gonna be something. Yeah. DC is coming strong this year. DC is coming strong this year. But there's a chance, there's a good chance. In fact, let me see something. If we get a Doctor Strange, I'm trying to see what date Doctor Strange comes out. Hey, we could see a Doctor Strange trailer today. If we see a Doctor Strange trailer today, it's gonna be crazy. It's gonna be like as crazy as seeing the first Doctor Strange trailer was. If a Doctor Strange trailer drops today, it's gonna be crazy. So I'm looking forward to the Doctor Strange trailer. I'm looking forward to the possibly looking forward to the Black Adam trailer. Um, and there should be some other movie trailers dropping today. Some pretty good stuff coming out this summer. But yeah, the commercials are usually the best part of um, that, and that in whatever team you win, you've bet on winning. Those are the best parts of the Super Bowl. Well, especially since if your team is nowhere near the Super Bowl, so you can just watch vicariously through others. All right, see you later. And once again, thanks everyone for checking out the stream. Enjoy watching the Super Bowl, and have a good one.